Hello and welcome back to the Canon Factory, an elegant podcast for a more civilized age. And this week in episode 4, we're going to talk about a question that our good friend Matt has about the direction of Star Wars, and maybe a couple of things that have happened to some certain characters that he feels aren't necessarily character-driven, but because the franchise needs somebody to be a certain place. As always, I'm your host, Sean, and I'm joined by...
Ike. Brennan.
This is Richie.
And this is Matt, and let me just go ahead and get right started with my question. So, as we talk about the new movies in this new trilogy that we have, it appears that in the new film, one of the major plot points is going to be the conflict between Rey and Luke, and that's necessary. It's precipitated by what happened in the previous film. And I guess my concern that I have with that is that how much of that is really driven by Luke's character and what we got to know in the first trilogy, as opposed to something that we just needed to do in order to introduce new characters. So J.J. Abrams needed to kind of get Luke out of the way in order to introduce new characters. It's not necessarily something that's just out of Luke. It's not necessary to Luke's character that he would be on this island. Maybe it's just a storytelling thing. And so that kind of lends me to question the whole direction of the story and where it's going. Is it just to introduce new characters, or are we going to be true to what we saw in the original movies?
Now let me ask you this, Matt. Is that mutually exclusive? So, J.J. Abrams said, he's quoted saying, every time he put Luke into a scene in The Force Awakens, he took over the film, which is why he just kind of kept pushing him back until he was basically no lines.
Till he was on an island somewhere.
Right. But just because he did that, and maybe one of his primary reasons was because it took away from these new characters, doesn't mean that it's also not a story point. Clearly, Luke has had some trauma, so within his character, it might be plausible for him to be, out in seclusion.
Yeah, all that's not to say that they couldn't do this well. It's just you want to make sure that they do. You don't want them just to kind of force this. I mean, the image that I'm getting of The Last Jedi is Luke is going to kind of be this mean old grandpa character that Rey just has to deal with, which kind of makes sense as what you need for a new story, because otherwise you're just going to have Luke come in and where's the story going to be? But is that character going to be consistent with the Luke Skywalker that we knew in the past? It sounds like it may not be, and the question is, are they going to do that well?
Well, I think that raises a good question. And I think to further Matt's point, to push back towards you, Sean,
sure.
Because I think what your point is good. We've only seen The Force Awakens, so we don't really know where they're going to go with it or what they're going to do. It's a completely different director to do something completely different.
Right.
But I would say that there are plenty of things that they had to do out of necessity for logistics with the prequel trilogy.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they had to do things logistically to tell a different story because they were setting it up for the OT.
Right.
And they're writing a movie that's taking place before. There's logistically things that they have to do.
I mean, the climax of the third film was already known.
Oh yeah, we knew it, right?
Right.
And there was it was kind of hard to trick us on anything because we knew things.
Right.
That were going to have to happen. But I think it to further Matt's point as well, and another check mark in that book is, Disney, the parent company of Marvel Cinematic Universe, they love to drop those people. They love to simply put people into films so that they can prepare them for the next film. They can prepare and set up the next movies. I mean, there was characters in Avengers and Civil War that we hadn't even seen until that moment, and now they have their own movie, and they're setting them up. The only reason that they were in those movies that came before them is so they could set up the next one.
Now, I'll counteract with you at this point.
Oh.
When you think of an executive who has to deal with the Star Wars films, who do you think of?
I think of George Lucas.
All right, well, a current executive.
Kathleen Kennedy.
And who does she work for?
She works for, what's his name? I mean, Disney, but yeah. But
No, she works for Lucasfilms.
Well, yeah, she works for Lucasfilms.
So she's the one who it seems like the directors have all of their contact with and decide whether or not they have creative push or pull. So while they are owned by Disney, they are not ruled by Disney. And I think Disney knows that they like the money that comes in, and they're going to keep the creative power with the creators.
Right, but I think you're right. I think that I really appreciate, especially seeing Gareth and JJ and Ryan headed into this, that they have been very vocal, that they have gotten a lot of creative control.
Right.
But Disney is still going to be about that bottom dollar and the shareholders.
I think if anybody had a little bit less creative control, it was probably JJ, because they had to get The Force Awakens right.
Right.
And the safest way to get that right was to model the original film and make it nothing like the prequel trilogy, because that was what they had to do. But now that the film has been rebooted and the series has been rebooted, everybody's on board with new Star Wars. Rian Johnson, you hire, who's this weirdo director. Love the guy, makes weird films, and he's gonna have some weird stuff in this movie, and I'm really excited about it. And it's gonna be a Star Wars movie like nothing we've ever seen, and I'm also excited about that. So to bring it back to Matt's point, I think that there's justified. You're justified in being worried about the direction of Star Wars based off The Force Awakens, but I think the logistics that we have to be concerned about were that they had to get the film right and they had to get it rebooted, and now that they have the freedom to do a lot of things that they didn't have to do.
Well, I think that the tie-in to the new movie is that the central conflict all is based around this Luke being on Ahch-To and Rey coming and finding him, and that was all set up in the previous movie, but it doesn't appear to me that has to be character-driven. So I think the key to this movie is going to be giving Luke a really, really, really good reason to be out on that planet all alone. Yeah. And if they can do that well, believably, in a way that fits with, who we know Luke to be, then I think they can make a great film. If they can't, there might be some backlash.
I mean, I think one thing we need to realize is that where Luke was also supposedly the first location of the first Jedi temple.
Right.
And so you would assume that he's there studying, meditating, training, learning,
watching,
growing,
staring.
All the ings. Just as much as he can. I think he realizes, how strong of a force that Snoke is. Maybe not as a force user, but as a persuader to get Kylo Ren to come over to the dark side. Mm-hmm. And I think what I would like to see, but what I'm hoping we're seeing, is how much of a BA that Snoke is in the Force, and that Luke realized that he was no match for Snoke, or that he couldn't fully defeat Snoke, and that's why he's there. So he's training and trying to build up his strength for that.
Brendan, it's interesting that you bring that up. As I listen to you, I kind of think about, in the Return of the Jedi, Luke's defining moment is his refusal to fight. So maybe him being off on this planet is within his. What is the Jedi who won't fight? What use is he going to be to the Resistance?
And going back to what you said, Matt, Luke is known to run away from a fight. We see in the second movie he runs off into the swamps, but that goes back to Luke being a little.
Right.
We're not going to go that far, but go for it, Sean. You looked like you had something you wanted to say.
I think it's clear that Luke is. You got to think of it. He's human. He's had multiple emotional traumas, and it's pushed him to the point.
Like what?
Maybe training your nephew to take over your legacy, and him killing everything you ever worked for, and realizing that you brought this evil into the world, and not realizing the evil was right in front of your face the entire time.
Ooh.
But
that might be one.
That might be one. So I think that's a part of it, is that he thinks that he can't. He tried his best to do the good in the world that he was meant to do, and he failed and brought more evil to the world than the way it was when he started. So I think he's naturally going to go into a place where.
Do you think he's given up?
I don't think he's necessarily. Well, I think he's given up until Rey convinced him that he's not. I think that's why she's there. I mean, and from the trailer, it looks like they're going to spend. My guess would be about 2/3 of the film on Ahch-To. There's all of the scenes we see with the two of them are on that planet, and there's some very different scenes. You have Rey training, you have them talking, you have Luke piggybacking, perhaps.
Oh, I hope so.
You have Luke with the book. You have Rey sprinting along the coast with her.
Yeah, but that
her
could all be one
lightsaber out.
training montage. Doesn't mean it's gonna be.
You're not gonna have a training montage.
It's not gonna be like Rocky,
I don't think
running
so.
up the stairs in Ahch-To.
Specifically, Rocky 4,
Yeah.
the movie that ended the Cold War.
Oh, dropping them.
Oh man.
Richie, ladies and gentlemen.
But Matt, are you still concerned?
Well, I mean, concerned maybe. That's definitely how I started. I mean, I'm super excited for this movie. I mean, as I said in the last podcast,
It's gonna be very cool.
it's Star Wars.
Very
I want to
cool.
see. I want to see sprawling space battles. I want to see
Vistas.
epic personal struggles. I want to see cool
Vistas.
planets. And if you give me that, I'm probably going to be happy.
Here's something I'll that we haven't mentioned yet either.
So Matt, you're the everyman.
Rogue One. I mean, they did a great story without having to set it up with
Hell of a film.
You know, they didn't have to set it up with a bunch of characters. I mean, granted, the one argument against the movie is that they probably spent a little too long at the first act of the movie is basically them jumping to planet to planet to planet to planet, showing each person. That was one of the major pushbacks that I heard with that. But I
Very
mean,
much like an Avengers film.
very much like an Avengers film, yeah. But they didn't they didn't have an entire movie to set them up. They had a one line out of a crawl that set that whole entire movie up. So they've done it before. They can do it again. I believe in them. Kathleen Kennedy, as mentioned before, I believe in her. I believe in Ryan.
Why?
Well, and that is a good point. I mean,
They haven't given me a reason not to.
I'm just wondering. I didn't know if you had some solid like.
No.
because
I mean,
Brennan the
I mean,
debater.
I'm just saying like
we're
Looper
too-
wasn't
yeah.
a great movie.
I liked it.
I like
Looper?
Looper.
I mean,
I love Looper.
I liked
I give it a solid like B plus A minus. I enjoyed it. I didn't think I wouldn't say great movie. I would agree with that.
No,
but I would still say it's a good
different movie, though. It's
Yeah,
it-
you
it-
guys want to talk
I
about
agree.
different movie? Let's talk about Brick.
Brick is a solid.
It
film.
is a solid film.
It's also a
It
solid
is
building material.
Also solidly weird. It is like very just the way the lines are delivered, the way it's directed is very different.
Right.
It
Yeah,
is.
but
It is
and
very
I'm
very
not
different.
I'm not trying to be contrary just to be contrary.
no,
like
I think that's a good
saying
question.
The Jedi are worthless, but I'm saying
Every episode.
I'm just saying
Gotta
like,
get it in.
Throwing it
everybody's
in.
like, wow, I trust Ryan. Like he's going to do
Yeah.
a great job. But like I understand he's made some good movies in the past, but
Right.
what makes us think that he's going to do a great job? Like
Well,
is that
I
because
think there's two-
Kathleen's instruction,
Yeah.
or because of the source material?
That's
that
point
he's got?
one. I would say point one is Kathleen Kennedy's instruction. I would say point two is
Source material.
source material. Yeah. So yeah, I have a third point. I would say my third point
All
too
right.
is just the way he has handled, the way he has approached it with a level of humility and
Absolutely.
consciousness of thinking, how is this not going to just affect the fans as a whole? You know, my mom's Star Wars fan, but also me as a Star Wars fan. When he was out at Celebration, shaking everybody's hand, up to 3 a.m. If he's handling his very valuable, expensive time to be that detailed with the fan base, how much more is he doing it with the movie? I guess is my point. Go ahead, Richie.
Yeah, I was just going to go ahead and chime in. I've been kind of quiet this episode.
Keep it down over there, please.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I'm enjoying just hearing your guys' perspectives. But this is actually, listening to you debate about Ryan kind of plays in a little bit to a prediction that I have about Last Jedi.
Oh.
And it's
This
not-
just in.
It's not a plot prediction. It's just I think that just because of the nature of how big this film is and how so many people want so many different things from The Last Jedi and from Rian Johnson, I've said almost from the beginning that I think that the Star Wars fan base is going to be split over this film. I think there's going to be a chunk of people who do not know how they feel about The Last Jedi. And maybe,
Which really is the mark of great art.
yeah, you could look at it that way.
Art.
Or you could
But
say that
I
prequel.
really think that, there's where Brennan is coming from right now, where he's kind of doubtful of Rian Johnson.
No, whoa. I never said I was doubtful. I'm saying
you trying to jump on the train now?
no.
He's
I'm
just-
saying
he's just
I'm
questioning.
asking why
He's
everybody's
asking
like,
good
oh, he's the best in the world. I love Ryan.
I mean, I don't think that's any of
say
our
it-
points or
They say
perspectives.
it just like that too. but yeah, I would say fine if there's uncertainty there. You're waiting for Ryan to prove himself.
Yeah, I'm saying-
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I don't think
that's
it's a bad
fair.
expectation.
Yeah,
But
Brennan's
Before
faith is based
I
on
place
sight.
my face in between his butt cheeks, I want to see what he makes.
God.
Man, Brennan.
Yeah,
love it.
there it is.
Making it so Ike's
but
kid
just-
can't, you guys kids can't watch this until they're,
Yeah,
two
I would
decades
feel like
away.
we're a good solid PG-13.
Just to tie up my point there.
Sorry.
Sorry, young Richard.
Richard, son of Richard. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I think people are going to be split
On
over this
Bandcamp.
movie. I think it's going to be polarized. The perspectives on the movie and on Ryan Johnson. Because because of just the things they're saying. He makes weird films. He makes strange decisions about those films, and I think that we're going to see some risky moves made in Last Jedi that are maybe going to leave some fans with a bad taste in their mouth, and I'm fine with that. But
unless you're on the wrong side.
Has
Sure.
there ever been a movie, or at least a Star Wars movie, where everybody's like, "Yeah, we all agree, that's fantastic"?
A New Hope.
No, for real though. Like, that's a genuine question.
I'm getting a genuine answer.
I would say
What, for
a
real?
New Hope and/or
A
Empire
New Hope
Strikes Back is
was like
probably
a
just as
global
close.
phenomenon.
Yeah.
It was just such a different movie, and it was done so well that I think it was 99% received well.
I hardly hear anyone ever say anything bad about Empire Strikes Back either.
Right.
Most people, at least from the film side of things, if they could pick one film out of the entire saga that's like perfect, they
Normally
usually say
Empire Strikes Back, yeah.
Normally.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of them got 100 on Rotten Tomatoes before you go Googling over there.
Well, I'm Googling, boy. You know I'm Googling.
Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there.
End discussion of all topics.
That is a good question, though. I want, which one is the highest rated on Rotten Tomatoes? That's a fair question.
A fair question that
I think it
do
is,
not
and I
hear
think
the answer
4% freshness score for
I-
Empire Strikes Back.
I think it is Empire Strikes Back has the higher score, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm looking.
Type in that New Hope. I love that you jump on Rotten Tomatoes and the top is Star Wars Saga ad. Go
Now
ahead.
what you got? Matt's got a question.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Well,
Matt.
so let's kind of tie in what Richie said and go back to what Sean said about what did you say, Sean?
New Hope's
Think
got
about
93%, guys. Just toss that out there.
93% solid. Sean, you had said that you thought from the materials that we've seen that about 2/3 of the new movie will happen on the island.
of Rey and Luke's scenes. Yes.
Now, how much of the movie itself do you think that's going to take up? Like how central to the plot?
I think the central conflict of the film is going to be dominated by from the New Republic and the First Order, with the starting of the movie with the New Republic or the Resistance fleeing their base on Dakar, and that's going to be a major conflict. And then them going to, I'm guessing, to half of them going to Crate and half of them going to Canto Bight, and dealing with the First Order in their own respects there. That's going to be a large portion of the conflict, whereas Rey and Luke will be much more of the learning aspect of the film.
Okay. So yeah, I'm kind of envisioning Rey and Luke being a conflict, at least for a
Well,
little
I
bit.
mean, yeah, there will be a relational conflict at the start of the film, yes.
Yeah. So
Now-
how long do you think that's going to last?
The first third, I don't know, maybe less. I think it always reminds me, and I'm sure nobody's going to get this reference. Well, maybe somebody. But the Assassin's Creed 3 game, your character goes to learn from the Grandmaster Assassin, who is since retired, and it's very much the same type of thing. And he shows up at his front door to ask to be trained, and he tells him no. So he goes and sleeps in his shed, and he asks the next day, and he asks for training, and he tells him no to leave. And he goes and sleeps in his shed again, and then fights off people who try to rob the old man later on. And then he finally says okay, and trains him. And I think it's going to be really similar to that.
You think Rey's going to have to fight with people stealing Luke's shed?
Yeah. Luke's tool shed's going to get
The
ransacked.
porgs. She's going to have to defend it from the porgs.
No, she's going to have to defend it from
The sea
the
monster.
sea monster.
The sloth
Oh.
sea
Well, we can
monster
see-
with
I mean-
Anakin's soul inside.
I think for all the toys that we've seen and all the different material that we've seen for the upcoming film Last Jedi, I haven't seen any.
Is that what's coming out?
Yeah, that one. We've only seen Ahch-To or Ahch-To, however you want to pronounce it. We haven't seen much of that, but we've seen a lot of Snoke's throne room, a lot of dark side stuff.
We got a whole trailer of that though.
That's true. I'm just saying, I'm kind of on Rich's side. I wish we could see more.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to make a whole lot of toys with just an island.
It's true.
There's not a whole lot going on, and I'd argue
It's
a lot
like
of
a
the
pet rock.
a lot of
Yeah,
the
that's what the porgs are for, right?
yeah. I was gonna say a lot of the excitement is the porgs, which is from Ahch-To.
Yeah. I guess I'm hoping the toys are kind of Like an example
Yeah,
of how the movie's going
It's
to
hard-
I know,
to
Brendan. You
relate.
want to see Luke die, and you want to see the Jedi stamped out. I get it.
No, I never
I think
said
it's
that.
really hard
No,
to
you
draw
did. It's
any,
all right.
any conclusions from the toys, really, because they're gonna. I mean, it's like what's that Freemaker series? Is the Lego Free, which is it's great, but
my little cousin David loves it.
yeah, and it's a great show. It's a lot of fun. If you guys have ever watched it, I mean, you're welcome to. Just know it's more of a kids show than Rebels or Clone Wars. But they I think it's the same goes for the toys, which is. It's all canon unless it's not.
Right.
Hot Wheels cars flying out of the Millennium Falcon isn't going to be canon.
Yeah, the toy with Snoke's throat
Right,
on him is
but-
the inside of BB-8. So
Right. So yeah. So like the porg standing on the corner over there in the background of the Hot Wheels, picture.
Sure.
Is canon, but there's not going to be Hot Wheels cars flying out of the bottom of the
I
Millennium
don't
Falcon.
know. I think
anytime.
Chewie could turn into a race car.
Right there you go. Exactly.
You heard it here first.
So what I'm saying is, I think we got to just take some of that stuff with a grain of salt.
Sure.
Yeah, and so to tie this Luke-Ray conflict into what Richie was saying about, maybe some people being disappointed and some people liking it, I mean, Rian Johnson essentially has an opportunity here to redefine Luke's character. I mean, how he handles that Ray-Luke conflict is going to affect how we see the past media. If you go and you watch this movie and then you go back and you watch the old ones, knowing what Luke will become is going to affect how you see the original films. And so that's
same thing happened with Anakin.
That's a big responsibility. I mean, that's a big risk to take. I mean, but if you're going to make new movies with the same characters, you're going to have to take that risk.
I just want to say I don't think I'm making a bold genius prediction here. I think it's logical. You either are going to get a film where Luke is the same character that we've always known and the people that want to see something new are going to be disappointed, or you're going to see a film where the character of Luke is changed radically and the people who want him to stay the same are going to be completely disappointed. So it's not a bold prediction that I'm making when I say that I think half of the people are going to walk away.
Which one do you want to see,
disappointed? Me personally,
How about we go around and each person say what they want?
I think I would like to see some change, because we have the original trilogy. I can always go back and watch that. I'll always love that Luke Skywalker, but this is a Luke Skywalker who's 30 years older and broken.
To use Brennan's words, he's seen some.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I've ever said that, but it's all right.
And I want to see that. I want to see
The last word.
I want to see a broken Luke, and I want to find out some things about him that we've never known or never seen before. So I lean towards wanting some changes.
How about you, Matt?
I think I agree with Richie. It would be a pretty boring story, I think, if we saw the same old Luke Skywalker. I mean, as Richie said, it's 30 years later. We're looking at an older man now instead of a young man. I mean, you totally expect someone to change, and in order for it to be an interesting story, you have to see that. I guess what I'm a little bit worried about is I have this picture in my head of the trope of the grumpy master, which, how many movies has that been in? And I just don't want a retelling of that with bogus motives. I want there to be a good reason for there to be that conflict between Luke and Rey. I don't want it to seem forced. I don't want to go back to the Chosen One MacGuffin again for, Luke's upset because he misinterpreted the Chosen One prophecy. To me, that would be a disappointing motivation. I hope there's a real reason that ties into Luke's character that he is in the situation that he's in.
Shauna McDonald?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm not even worried about it. It's gonna be a different movie. It's gonna be changed. It's gonna be a new story. My question my only thing that I've kind of thought about just now was, it does very much mirror kind of Luke with Yoda, Rey now with Luke. My question is, will they make it different in the sense where Yoda stayed on the planet, Luke will leave and go with her, and is that enough of a change where you have? I mean, it's pretty much confirmed you're gonna have the grumpy master. You're going to have the guy who doesn't want to train her and has to be convinced to. So the question is, will he leave with her and go to deal with the conflict, or will he stay behind on this planet?
Good question.
Ike?
I have been thinking as you go and going around that this is eventually going to get to me, and I'm going to have to come up with a good answer. And I feel like I have an okay one, and it's actually I think the opposite of Matt. Just kidding. Maybe not quite the opposite. I think for me, I don't want Luke to change. I want Luke to be the same, and I think there's a good possibility that he'll be the same.
Same in what aspect?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. In the aspect of who Luke is in his character, and I don't mean like cinematically his character. I mean his character as a person, or
Right.
His moral convictions, which are his family and his friends. I just think that that's going to play out in a vastly different way. So, for instance, what I mean by that is I think that there's a good chance we could find out that the reason that Luke didn't show back up to save everyone is because he was so convicted about his family and friends that maybe he didn't want to get re-involved because he knew he could mess it up more. So it's the same convictions that Luke has always had being played out in different manners.
Absolutely.
You are describing what I want. I want his original
Well,
motives.
then why are you disagreeing with me, Matt? I'm kidding.
And I think that answers my question.
The same motives playing out different ways, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's what we're gonna see is that we're gonna have depressed Luke at the start, and Rey's gonna help Luke find himself again. So less of a telling of the apprentice finding themselves, but more of the master finding themselves. And you're gonna see Luke come back to who he should be and charge to lay his side.
Do you guys care about how I feel or no? I mean,
Yeah, Brendan, go
we
ahead.
can wrap up. I don't care. I mean,
I was waiting for you. I stopped.
No, you're good. I mean, everybody knows how I feel about everything.
All right, then what do we matter?
No.
Brendan,
Yes.
how do you
the
feel
very
about
obvious changes?
Blackberry pie?
I just think I agree with I want him to have the same motives, but at the same time, I want him to show some courage, I guess. Because I don't think it's courage that he's running away. I think it's stupidity that he's running away. The things like, oh, I'm going to help my family by running, or help my friends and my family by running away instead of making the situation worse.
I don't think it's stupidity. I think it's depression. But
Well, that just I was going to say.
I guess.
Well,
I get what you're getting at. Keep going.
yeah,
But, I mean, obviously, he's the strongest Force user right now that they know of. I mean, since we don't know that Snoke is a Force user or not, and Kylo is his apprentice, I'm assuming Luke has taught him everything he knew, but not everything Luke knew. So I'm assuming Luke's the strongest Force user, and I'm assuming since he's on Ahch-To or Ahch-To, however you want to pronounce it, that he's at that temple. We've seen in the past Force ghosts like Qui-Gon visiting Yoda. So I'm assuming he's being visited by his father. He's being visited by Yoda or Obi-Wan and getting some training through them. So I'd like to see him make that decision, say, okay, realizing that I'm the only one not I'm the only one, but I can definitely be a help to my friends and my family and leave the island instead of just saying like, no, you got it, Rey. Like, I've taught you everything I can right now.
Well, Brendan, I think you raise a good point, and going back to what Ike said, the motivation has to be a good motivation. I don't think being sad or feeling like he's just going to mess stuff up, I would be disappointed with those motivations. It's got to be something better than that. It's got to be something that comes out of who his character is, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think anything else would break the universe a bit, to be honest with you.
Right.
Because it wouldn't break the universe, but it would definitely break the OT if it wasn't something similar. So I think that's a good place to leave it. I got really distracted. I was on my computer over here, and there is a spoon that looks like a lightsaber. And it's made by Kellogg's, and I need it.
we're about to run to Target and grab that spoon. But I want to thank you guys for joining us once again in this edition of the Canon Factory, an elegant podcast for a more civilized age, your source for everything Star Wars. And once again, just a reminder that 100 Days of Star Wars is right around the corner. Go follow us on Twitter at the Canon Factory. See that Google Calendar. Follow along and see as we journey through all of the visual canon. We'll see you next time, guys.